and the accessibility and usability. So just to say with instructional materials, I've been kind of struck while I've been here at Damon that a lot of the course, I don't know, a lot of the, so I teach 3 different courses so far. have access and have taught in them since I've been here. And typically the only learning activity that we would give, oh, I'm sorry, not instructional materials, learning activities and learner interaction.
I follow you.
The only learning activity would be just a discussion forum where they're writing something initially and then talking to their peers. So we typically have that structure in all of our courses in the nursing department. But in my past, it's that has just been one part of doing other things. So my question is, does it pass inspection if, to not have a variety of actions the student can take, or not give them an option for choosing how they want to show you that they're learning? Does that make any sense?
It does. If you were
Okay.
to ask me if an instructor could simply design a course that is mostly consumed asynchronously, and then the discussion board is the only place where students are engaging, I
Yeah.
think that I would struggle to allow that course to meet the standard. However, sometimes my assumptions and biases about this are challenged pretty hard when I'm doing a review. I tend to be someone who is all about engagement. Even when I'm facilitating like this, I like to see people and
Yeah.
have you look at stuff and talk with me. And that's a pretty strong bias. There are many people who engage students in different ways. And so it's important for me as a reviewer who comes in with that strong bias to look beyond the discussion board. I look into the syllabus and I see, is the instructor meeting with these students at any point to confer with them about their work? Are they doing any collaborative project work at any point? Do they have the opportunity to do scenario-based learning or field experiences of any kind? And are they sharing those documents or reflections with anyone? Sometimes it can be really hard to see the engagement when you're only looking at Blackboard and you're only looking at the syllabus and the course materials. But if you look deeply into them, I often find that there are levels of engagement going on that I wouldn't have noticed at first glance. Sometimes during our debrief, the question comes up and we have conversations, and some people might have noticed, opportunities for engagement that I didn't, and that's very helpful to me. And I think that's why the review process is so important. Sometimes though, we will make notations. You will always receive feedback from us. So we might say that the standard is not yet met. And one of our recommendations is that you're able to make more explicit how students are engaging, because often if that standard isn't met, it isn't because it isn't happening. It's because the instructor hasn't expressed it within the course, hasn't articulated it in Blackboard or in the syllabus in a way that helps us as outsiders even notice that it's going on. But if the course were largely asynchronous and there were no live meetings at all, and there was only the discussion board, that would be problematic. But even our synchronous meetups, and the opportunities that we have to talk together during a class, and your efforts to put kids in Zoom breakout rooms, and your willingness to kind of lean into the challenges of all of that, that's a really good example of pretty decent engagement.
Okay. I just, so most of our courses, the courses I teach seem very linear. So Angela, is there an element in quality that, would beg, I don't know how to say this, would beg for us to have some kind of, you mentioned a feedback loop earlier, rather than just be linear, do this, then do this, do this, then do this, but there's not a, coming back together of, what we're learning in this course. It gets summarized at the end, introduced at the beginning, we plow through the steps in the middle, but I'm not sure that there's some community being built or understanding of why do we do all this stuff,
Yeah, if that's a priority for you, I'm actually designing a course with Eric right now for TTI, and I've been really thoughtful about how I'm using discussion boards and weekly assignments. So my students are doing weekly assignments where they are answering questions about the content, short answer, and they're intended to help them self-assess their mastery of that week's content. But what I'm having them do is self-assess their content mastery and then take note of where they did really well and what they're still struggling with. And that reflection has to go to the discussion board, and they're writing a weekly reflection that comes to me. So I am not scoring their homework, and I am not scoring or assessing their answers to content-based questions. My work is all around, what part of the content did you struggle with this week? Where did you really see yourself having strengths? Talk about that with your peers, talk about it with me. How is that going to inform what you do next as a learner inside of that course? And so if that's something that you're interested in, I can absolutely, share different ideas for that. I also have a discussion board rubric that's pretty robust, that moves beyond simply, you need to look at what one other or two other classmates said and offer two responses.
I would
I
love
really
to
want
see
them to
that.
build and sustain an engaging discussion. Now, I will be honest, instructors who are not going that far are not necessarily failing to meet the standards. And I need to always keep myself grounded in that rubric when I'm evaluating courses. But just, instructor to instructor, I hear what you're saying. And if you want to talk about how to do that, differently than what we typically tend to see with people who are new to online learning, I'm happy to share ideas.
So, do you also feel that in an asynchronous online course, that it is a good idea to make opportunities for the students to, take an optional Zoom with you to explain something and not just do the instructional video and put it out there and say, here, if you're having trouble, here's
Yeah.
another look at it?
It's nothing that I would, expect or demand of instructors, and the QM process does not demand it either. But there is a significant amount of research, especially coming out this year, to suggest that a lot of instructors in different contexts are seeing great success with what they're calling open work hours, not
Yeah.
office hours, but I'm going to be doing my work between 5 and 6 o'clock tonight, and I'm going to leave Zoom open. If you just want to come in here and do your homework with me, come on in. And a lot of people are getting a really good response to that, where people are just meeting up to do homework together. And if they want to collaborate or chit chat about something that they're seeing there, and you're available if they have a question, that is a really wonderful opportunity for a lot of learners. And that's a huge bonus for engagement too.
Okay, well, that affirms that I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I have coffee hours once a
'Cause-
week just for the teachers that I support. And there is no agenda, there is no test. I don't have PowerPoint slides. I literally show up with a cup of coffee once a week. Tonight it's at 5:30. And whoever shows up, and people talk about challenges they're facing, and we do a little work together. We bounce ideas off of each other, and it's just a way to really humanize the remote learning experience.
Yeah, I really love that idea.
Yeah.
So if you do open hours, you would have to send Zoom links to your office hours, all of them out to the students, I'm guessing. So I asked them if they want to meet with me. What I told them was I reserved 4 hours, let's see, 8 hours a week that I would be available for them. And being nurses, of course, the hours are more akin to when people would be getting off night shift in the morning or
Yeah.
going to work at night, because a lot of the students, once you check in with your patients as a nurse, you've got a little bit of lag time. So actually, while you're at work, you could access your teacher during a few hours when the shift starts.
Sure.
Um, So I tried to plan that out based on, what I know about our work life. But I didn't send them all to them because I thought that might be overwhelming to send them all of those appointments and then just say, you can accept them. It doesn't mean that you have to participate.
Have you ever considered using your personal meeting room instead? So I have a personal meeting room. You do too. If you go into your
Yeah,
meetings tab,
yeah, I saw that.
and if you click on personal meeting room, that link never changes. Your room is
Oh,
always open. The one of the drawbacks to using your personal meeting room, and I maybe might not use it for lessons or classes or meetups, is you don't have the ability to use all of the tools in Zoom, but quite honestly, I don't use them all that often anyway. And so
yeah.
I tend to use my personal meeting room link for just about everything. And I
Okay.
like it because it never changes. And so it's something you could put in Blackboard and say, my office hours are here at this particular time. We're going to have coffee hours or work hours every Wednesday from 7 to 9. This is always the link. They have to be signed into their Damon account so that they don't get
Uh-huh.
bumped into the waiting room, but they can still get into your personal room that way. And
Well,
that
Angela,
saves you.
yeah, that is really great news.
Yeah.
All I have to do is go in, the little blue icon, get in my
Yeah. And I think
plugged in.
really the only thing that you don't have access to is polling, and a couple of other things that you probably aren't going to want for those sorts of
No.
meetups anyway.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anything else about the standards that you want to speak to or ask
just
about?
so accessibility and usability, um, books. So I wanted to ask about, I have students that don't purchase the book and they try to do the class without it. And so I don't
I
really know
might have a 20-year-old who does
that
that.
problem because some things they are able to just, borrow from this person or that person, or somehow
Or they
they,
can find PDFs online of a lot of things too.
yeah, they're finding enough to get going here. So I guess my question is, I don't know how concerned I'm supposed to be if they don't have a book, but they're able to do the course. If
Well,
that
I always
accessibility
sort
is,
of maintain the understanding that I have outcomes for my course and I have assessments that measure those outcomes. How students get to that place is not my responsibility. I'm going to create the pathway. I'm going to offer an invitation, read this textbook, watch these, lecture series,
right.
this homework. But if they take a different pathway to achieve the same standard or objective, that's a completely okay thing.
Okay. Good news. Okay.
Yeah. And it really
Questions
does
then.
speak to accessibility. If we're talking about, and I know it's not all of them, not by a stretch, because
Yeah,
like I said, I have a
right.
20-year-old who does this sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
or the
but if
student
they
that,
can't afford the textbook and they're able to learn the content that they need to learn to meet those outcomes, you're actually making your course more equitable and accessible, and not fussing about that too much.
okay,
Yeah.
that is good news because occasionally I have students that will not engage. I try to reach out, I try to get a hold of them during the course. And then in the last 2 or 3 weeks, they want to do the whole course.
Yeah.
And some of them are capable of doing that. So,
Well, that's
okay.
their prerogative.
Yeah, I don't think they learn as much if they would have engaged
No,
along the way, but they can meet the course objectives.
for sure. All
Okay,
right. We're
wonderful.
gonna,
Thank you.
yeah, I'm gonna move on just in the interest of time.
Yeah.
What you need to know that can be very helpful for planning your review is that is a difference between essential standards, very important standards, and important standards. And if you look at that last document, that one pager, you're
Mhm.
going to see that each is ascribed a different number of points. Now on that same slide, there's an annotated list of standards too. So if you want to know more about what a standard means, you can open up that other document that's on the right on that same slide.
I saw that.
Yeah, the essential standards, what makes them crucial inside of the review process is you have to master each of them in order for your course to pass a review. There are 23 essential standards. They're worth 3 points each, and all of the essential standards must be met. Two standards, standards 2.1 and 2.2, they speak specifically to course and module level objectives, and the fact that they're measurable. Those standards must be met very early on in the review. Otherwise, the review comes to a halt. And I will reach out to whoever the course rep is and say, we're really concerned because you don't seem to have course outcomes or module outcomes, or there may be some issue inside of them. And we need to work together to get those in place before we can continue with the review. Now, one of the things that I wanted to show you, and you can click on this yourself if you wish, this is actually a demo website. This is an archive, a repository of different courses. And so I'm looking here at Dan Feinberg's course, and as you can see, they don't use the same platform that we do, the same LMS necessarily. It looks a little bit different than our Blackboard view does. But when we go in, I have to say, this made me feel very much like I did during my first reviews, where I open up this page and I'm sort of like, okay, I'm looking for course objectives. Where are they? Right?
Yeah.
Where might you find them? And so people who are doing reviews will just start digging through everything, hoping that they can find them. In this case, they're in course information, and you scroll down and you can find them right here. There are some course objectives and outcomes. And when I look at them, they're not measurable just yet. And that would be my feedback on this set of outcomes. What I also know from digging through this course is there are no module level outcomes inside of this course just yet. Why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing this with you so that you have a sense of what a reviewer confronts when they go into a course, especially if the language that this course is speaking is one that is not at all familiar to us. If we have no schema, we aren't really clear about how you designed the course or what lives where, we may struggle to find things in order to give you credit for those essential standards. Where might we find module outcomes inside of a course like this? Just in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you, I could not find any module outcomes. It doesn't mean that they're not here. It means that I couldn't find them. And one of the reasons I can't find them is there is no common language or schema. So one of my biggest pieces of advice is that when it comes to what's essential, make sure that it is situated prominently inside of the course.
Okay.
Use a Start Here tab. Make your course objectives very clear and your module objectives very clear as well. One of the most important things that you can create in order to have a successful review is an alignment map where you turn your course schedule, which usually states the dates and assignments that are due, put your course out objectives and your module objectives into that course schedule so that we can see here's the course objective, here's the module objective, here's the assignment that you did and the learning activity and the assessment that's due. Make sure your grading policy and your grading criteria and your rubrics and tools are easily accessible and that there's some information about learner support. If we can see those things, the likelihood that we're going to credit you right out of the gate is very high. Very important standards are worth 2 points each. There are 12 of them. And while they do not all have to be met to ensure a successful review, try to keep in mind that your course must earn at least 85 points total. So they do matter. They're still important and we don't want to ignore them. And then there are important standards that are worth 1 point each, but the same thing is true where just because they're only worth 1 point, if you are significantly below 85 points total, every point counts. And more importantly, it's important for students to be able to experience the benefit of having that standard met. So in general, people will often ask, how might I efficiently plan to be successful? Use a preparing for a QM review checklist. So if you have your own slides, you can open that up. Why am I being denied access to my own document? Here we go. You should be able to get in just fine now. Shout out to Eric, who uses a very similar version of this for TTI. I stole this from him and I'm starting to build into it a little bit. This is a checklist that you can use. And if you look at the tabs along the bottom, the first tab introduces all of the essential standards. The second tab, all of the very important standards. And then the third tab, the 1 point important standards. Each page inside of this checklist gives you the ability to do a self-check. This is also a document that I'm going to be using and that I know Eric uses. If you want me to do a pre-review of your course before you submit it for an official review, I'm happy to use this document to give you some feedback. And the nice thing about it is if you look in the resources column, I'm starting to link out to webinars and tools that you can use in order to achieve that particular standard. For example, I talked about having a course map, right?
Uh-huh.
There's a description of how you can create one right here. And then the template that we tend to use is right here. This is an example of one that Eric shares out. And you can make your own copy of this and edit it to fit your course specifically.
Okay.
You don't
Nice.
have to use our templates, but they can be a very helpful way to make sure that you're meeting those standards. I would also encourage you to use the master course template because the master course template has been built in alignment with QM, and you are going to attend to many of the standards. And Eric has already done that heavy lifting, and Peter too, in order to get there. I already spoke and I just shared the course alignment map with you. Another way that you can ensure success is that you demonstrate alignment between your course outcomes, your module outcomes, your assessments and activities in the map, in your syllabus, in your Start Here tab, and even in each module, where each module could start with, this is the course objective we're working with today. These are the module objectives. And here's how today's activities are going to help you master and meet those outcomes. The QM self-review is an official process that you can put yourself through on the QM website. And if you click on that link in the future, there's some information here about how to go through a self-review once you're registered inside of the QM system. And you can always make an appointment with me to get help, or even just drop me an email and say, hey, Angela, would you do a pre-review of my course for me? And I'll use that chart that I shared with you previously, those sheets, and I'll give you some feedback before you even submit it. If your course doesn't meet the standards and you feel that we missed something that you actually did, make sure you take note of it. Make any recommended revisions, drop me an email or schedule an appointment if you think you need some help, and then submit the amendment form through QM. You'll receive an email that will tell you exactly how to do that. And I will review your course again once you feel you've made some changes or that we need to rectify something that we did not see. And we'll make the final determination around the course. And I do that. You can learn a lot more about the QM process and see a lot of tools that can support you in that work by visiting our new ID On Demand website. When you come here, you can do a lot of things here, like register for our webinars and schedule a consultation. But in terms of preparing for a QM review, if you look in the upper right, you can actually sort this website by the QM standards. So if you're working on learner objectives, click on that page. There are all sorts of webinars and tools here that will help you meet the standards that live inside of that particular, the specific standards that live inside of that general T1 review standard. So every
Okay.
time we give a webinar, we make sure that we link up the recording, and the tools that we use are here. Everything that I've referenced through today's session is available on that website too. And you can always schedule an appointment with us as well. So I know it's 2:00 on the button, but I am more than willing to hang around if you have other questions, Mary.
So I just want to clarify, this is really